welcome everyone to our College Support Service panel, which is sponsored by Greenwich High School, both the Special Education Department and the Guidance Department. And, we really appreciate this opportunity of putting this program together. And we're going to have a short introduction, a welcome, and then we're going to jump right into the program. And I'll be introducing our 4 panelists, which have agreed so willingly to be a part of this. And everybody just sit back, enjoy your homes. No worries about parking tonight or weather or college night with thousands of people, where we could sit back and kind of just ease into this. So first off, let me introduce Mr. Matthew Hartigan. He is our interim special education administrator at Greenwich High School, and he has a few words to say.
And good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Ms. Vlsp and Ms. Nadel, for helping organize this today. And thank you to our panelists as well, our most important guests, for joining us. Happy you guys were all able to make it virtually. And again, this is a great opportunity for our students and families to see what kind of services and supports that you guys provide. And I am also interested to learn and enjoy the presentation as well. So thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for the introduction, Ms. Vlsp.
Thank you, Mr. Hartigan. And again, I would also like to introduce Judith Nadel. She is our guidance coordinator for grades 6 through 12, and she's going to be here this evening, and she's going to be helping, and she's going to be, I think, helping us out with the chat and the Q&A. So thank you, Judy. If anything that you'd like to say.
No, I'm just happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to learning new things myself.
Super. So we're gonna jump right into this, and like I said, this is our 3rd year of doing this, and the first 2 years we did this as a part of college night. Obviously that was not possible this year, as we did not have our college night, but this has become like an annual event for us, and backed by popular demand, we're doing this virtually. We have some returning folks for our panel, and we have a newcomer as well. And I would just like to introduce them briefly, and then each one will have a few minutes to talk about their school, their program, their support program, etc. And then we will open it up for a sizable amount of time for question and answer. So I'm going to quickly introduce the 4 panelists, and then we'll go from there. So first we have Karen Fisher Dickman. She's the Associate Director of Admissions at Lynn University in Boca Raton, Florida. And she's going to be speaking about Lynn, but also their well-known program, the Institute for Achievement and Learning. So welcome, Karen. Our second panelist is Alyssa Campo Carmen. She is the director of the Center for Student Accommodations at Manhattanville College. And I know she's a returner as well, returnee as well. So welcome, Alyssa. Third, we have Mary Ellen Gordino, the Associate Director of the Office of Accommodations and Accessibility at Marist College up in Poughkeepsie, and also a returnee. So welcome, Mary Ellen. And last, we invited this year a newcomer to our panel, and we're very fortunate to have Christine Wenzel, Associate Director for the Center for Students with Disabilities at the University of Connecticut Storrs campus. So welcome all. So I would like to start, we're going to make this very simple, start alphabetical order, and we're going to start with Lynn University. And Karen, if you could speak a little bit about Lynn and your Institute for Achievement and Learning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. As you said, I would love to be with all of you in person tonight. I love Greenwich High School. I love the college fair. I love the dinner that you all cook for us. You treat us so well, but I do not miss the parking. So this is good. This is very, very good. So thank you so much for hosting us virtually this evening. I work at Lynn University in Boca Raton, Florida. So sandwiched right between Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. We are having quite the cold front as I sit here and speak with you all tonight. It's about 65 degrees. As you can see, my scarf, my sweater. We really got to bunker down. It's winter in Boca. So that's where we're at right now. But I did just want to tell you a little bit about Lynn and our academic support program that we do offer for students. So we're a relatively small school, just shy of 3,000 undergraduate students. So average class size with us is about 19, nothing's bigger than 30. Curriculum and instruction at Lynn, just in general for all of our students, is extremely hands-on. We have very much a collaborative learning style, guest speakers, internship opportunities, group projects, class discussion, really taking what you're learning and putting it into practice. And that's how we teach, and that's how we operate. And it's a very hands-on learning environment. So if you think that is something that your students could benefit from, I think Lynn could be a great option. We have an incredible academic support program called the Institute for Achievement and Learning. I know that's a really long name that you'll probably forget. So we call it the Institute for short, or the IAL for short. So if you hear me reference those two terms, that's what I'm talking about. It services about 20 to 25% of our student population. It is academic support only. So students are in the same classes, the same residence halls, the same majors as everybody else. It's just going to be added support outside of the classroom. So all of our students will have access to professional tutors. These are professional tutors hired by the university, experts in their content area, have a master's degree or higher, who will be able to tutor every student in the program one-on-one as many hours per week as they need. Maybe there's one class you're really doing well in. You don't need any tutoring. Maybe you just need a tutor a couple times a month. Maybe there's a class you're really struggling in, and 2 or 3 hours of tutoring a week is what you're going to need. That works out too. So professional tutors hired by the university. You'll also have access to our math lab and our writing center, which are sort of a come and go as you please type of a situation for math and writing specific content. You'll also have access to our testing center, where you'll be able to take all of your exams in a distraction-free, nicely lit, climate-controlled sort of area, because there's nothing more frustrating than when you're taking an exam and you see somebody get up and turn theirs in, and you're on like question 5 or 6, and you're thinking, how is this person done? I haven't even started, you know? So having that area to really take some of that stress and pressure off your exams is really helpful. And then in my opinion, sort of the crux of the program, the meat and potatoes, and the pièce de résistance is our academic coaching. And we have certified academic coaches who work with all of our students in the support program on a weekly basis. It's 60 minutes a week. So it can either be twice a week for 30 minutes or once a week for 60, again, depending upon your learning style. And they are going to work with students on the organizational, structural, time management end of things. So kind of culmination of everything that is being a student at Lynn University. The goal of our program is for students to transition out over the 4 years. It's not to say that we don't have students that stay all 4 years, because we absolutely do, but we like to try to give you the skills and things you need to sort of transition on your own. We have some amazing transitional programs if you're not ready to quit our institute cold turkey. We have those options for you as well. But again, it's a really well-established program that has been around for over 30 years. It is an additional fee in addition to our cost of attendance. And when you do apply, you'll fill out your regular application to Lynn. Then you'll fill out a questionnaire for the Institute for Achievement and Learning, and have to submit your most recent psych ed testing, which does have to have been completed within the last 3 years. So still going through the same admission process, just a few other documents that we'll require. So that's just a basic overview of the Institute for Achievement and Learning at Lynn University.
Thank you, we really appreciate it. And again, for parents and staff or students that are attending tonight, please, if you do have questions, you could put them in our chat, and we will get to a question and answer period once the 4 presenters have had their opportunity to present. So I have one quick question for Karen. What's a cold front in Florida? What do you consider a cold front?
Well, this morning it was 50, so I had to turn those seat heaters on. I had to put a jacket on. 50. So now I think it's about 62 outside. So
I think we're about 30 around down.
Right.
Around
so we're just trying to keep warm, you know, all in the same boat.
So everything is relative, but thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. And we'll be back talking to you in a few minutes. So next up, we're gonna have representing Manhattanville College, Alyssa Campo-Carmen. She's gonna talk a little bit about the Center for Student Accommodations at Manhattanville College in Purchase, New York.
Awesome, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. So thank you again for having me. I will primarily be discussing the Center for Student Accommodations, the accommodations process, and the support programs that we offer. I was a student at Manhattanville as well, so if there are any general questions, I might be able to answer them if you do want to throw them in the chat, and if not, I can point you in the right direction after this. In addition, this is my 20-year-old cat. She does what she wants because she's 20, so I do apologize if she starts walking circles, but she's here, you know, for better or worse. Here we are. So first and foremost, our focus is to provide reasonable accommodations under ADA. So once a student applies to Manhattanville and decides that that's the place for them, they can reach out to me and my staff, and we can start getting the process going to put accommodations in place. The IEP doesn't always directly transfer, but we certainly use that as a historical document. And we do everything on an individual case-by-case basis. Once a student is registered with us, they have the ability to apply for one or both of our fee-based programs. So these are support services that go beyond what ADA requires. We have two programs. One is the Valiant Learning Support Program. You'll hear me refer to that as Vlsp. And we also have Pathways and Connections, which we call PAC, P-A-C. So to start off with Vlsp, that is our program where we have students paired up with professional learning specialists. They work 3 hours a week with that same learning specialist, so they really build a rapport over time. The primary focus is really executive functioning. So we're focusing on things like organization, time management, working through the writing process, developing study skills. It's really a how-to program. So we're helping the students build the skills that they need to navigate the college curriculum. We are not content specific. So that's one thing to note. For Pathways and Connections, we also sort of focus on the executive functioning piece, but it's a much smaller program and it's for students on the autism spectrum. We kind of hit that executive functioning component more in like the social setting. So we help students, to kind of work through their transition to the college campus. We help to identify resources and kind of get them connected. There are 4 components to that program. Students have an option for an upperclassman peer mentor that can meet with them once or twice a week, either to get a meal or just to kind of chat and have a cup of coffee or whatever the case may be. There is a one-on-one session weekly with our PAC coordinator, who is a professional full-time staff member in our office. She works with students on, scheduling things, role playing. Let's say you have a conflict with a roommate. How do I kind of mitigate that? Let's go through that. How do I write this email to the professor? So anything that might be coming up along the way. We also have a weekly group workshop for all PAC participants, which we try to cater to the needs of our students. We have our Center for Career Development come in to speak with the students, student health and counseling to talk about stress management and things like that, so on and so forth. And then finally, we have some exclusive social events for this group where they can kind of practice some of these skills that they're building throughout their time in the program. And that's usually pretty fun. So this year, given our constraints, we actually had a cooking class with Zwilling Cooking School. So we had some professional chefs on camera with all these cool camera angles, and we cooked up a really fancy 4-course meal. So that was awesome. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, our programs. I guess I'll kind of leave it there. I know a lot of people need to speak and we want to leave time for questions, so I'll hope to answer questions at the end.
Thank you, Alyssa. Really appreciate it. And we will be rounding back to you and the other panelists. We will. We're going to leave plenty of time. So next up is Mary Ellen Gordino. She's the Associate Director for the Office of Accommodations and Accessibility at Marist College up there in Poughkeepsie. Mary Ellen?
Thank you so much for having us. So welcome everyone. My name is Mary Ellen, like Christopher said, and Marist is located about 90 minutes from Albany and 90 minutes from the city. So we're, squished right there in between in Poughkeepsie. Beautiful, beautiful campus. I went to Marist myself. So of course I love it and I love the campus. If you get a chance over the next 2 months, we're going to be doing a lot of actually in-person visits, so students can sign up and still come to visit our campus while our current students are home for the winter break. So I'm here to talk a little bit about our learning support program at Marist, and so our program is called the Learning Support Program. In order to get into the program, you need to have a documented learning disability or ADHD. And we're looking for students who have taken college preparatory courses, study, they have a commitment to work with a learning specialist. And essentially our program, just like many people said on this panel, is a fee-based program. So the student will meet with their learning specialist twice a week for 45 minutes to an hour. And they'll work on things such as time management, organization, writing skills, all different types of academic strategies. We also have our incoming freshmen actually come to a program in the summer, 2 days before school starts. It's called the AIM program. So it stands for Achievement, Involvement, and Mentorship, AIM. And so students get to learn about the campus, they get to see their classrooms. We go over all the pertinent academic sites that we use and things like that. And then it's filled with social activities as well. So we match all of our incoming freshmen with an upper class mentor as well, so they can work with that person throughout the whole year and kind of navigate that first year of college. So it's a really nice program. Now, the learning support program is a little unique. So at Marist, students actually apply to Marist College and they apply to the learning support program. And we actually run our entire admissions process on our own with the help of admissions, but we are actually making the decision of who gets into the learning support program. So if you get into the learning support program, then you get into Marist. If you don't get into the learning support program, then you don't get into Marist. So it's a little bit different than a lot of schools. So, you know, that's how our admissions process works. But essentially, you know, you're going to apply to Marist and you apply to our program. And then we ask again, I think Karen was saying, you know, providing like the psychoeducational assessments and different documents. There's a separate application essay and recommendations and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, if we decide that we want to interview you, we do invite you to our campus for an interview. This year, we're all lucky it's going to be on WebEx or Zoom. But and then we decide on, you know, if we'll grant you admission or not into our program. So that's just the uniqueness of our program. Not much more to add to that other than, you know, Marist has about 4,800 undergraduate students and about roughly 1,500, 2,000 graduate students. And our class sizes are really small. We have about, you know, it can be like low 20s in most of our classes, but when you get into the major, it gets even smaller. It's a great place to learn and to thrive in. Students are super involved. 50% of our students actually go abroad at Marist. So, you know, that's a big thing that Marist students do. And there's over like 80 something clubs for you to join and activities. So it's a nice place and a really community centered place. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Marist. But again, thank you for having us or having me too. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. I really appreciate it. And we'll have lots of questions. And then our panelist, our last panelist that's going to have to present for us is from the University of Connecticut, the Center for Students with Disabilities, Christine Wenzel.
Hi, thank you for having us, having me tonight. So, you know, I have a bunch that I can share with you about UConn, but as everyone has said, I do want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for questions. So our Center for Students with Disabilities is housed in the Division of Student Affairs, and we work with about 4,000 students, and that the disability types range from students with asthma and allergies all the way up to students with some pretty severe psychiatric conditions. So it kind of runs the gamut in there. The way that our center, it sounds like everyone has kind of touched a little bit on what our office does. So we're kind of a hybrid of everything that's been said. So I will do my best to articulate that. So what happens is students apply to the university first. We're a public institution, as you all know, so students go through the regular admissions process. Once they have been accepted, they would then self-identify to our center, which they can do right from our website or download the app that we've just created. We've worked with our SAIT department to create an app specific to our center. So students can download that app and register that way there, and they can upload documentation and all of that through the app. As well as sign up for push notifications on appointments and stuff. But so they would register with our center, and then they would get assigned to work with one of the professional staff members in the office. We all kind of have an area of expertise, but we are all generalists in the sense that we do have people on our caseload of a variety of different disabilities and conditions. So once you get assigned to work with your DSP is what we call ourselves, which just stands for Disability Service Professional. That person would be sort of the go-to for that student to connect with regarding any academic or residential accommodations. And there's an exhaustive list on our website, but you know, as many of my colleagues have already shared tonight, it's really an individualized interactive process, and everything is looked at on a case-by-case basis. So you can go to our website and you can look at the accommodations, but I say that, and every semester there's something students that will request that we haven't ever come across. So it's constantly changing, and we're always, you know, revising and looking at that on that case-by-case basis. So once a student gets assigned to work with their DSP, they will stay with that person throughout their duration of time at UConn, and we will interact with that student every semester to request accommodation letters and communicate what the approved accommodations are with the faculty members. In addition to sort of the main mission of our center, we have a couple of different specialized programs housed within the office. So Beyond Access is our fee-for-service program that sounds very similar to some of the other programs that have been touched upon tonight. You don't actually have to have a disability to work in that, to work with that program. Most of the students that are registered in it do, however. But basically what happens is students they sign up to be a part of that program, and they get assigned to work with what we call a strategy instructor, which is a trained graduate assistant. They're all getting their master's or doctorate degrees in a related field: school counseling, school psychology, special ed, etc. And they all have a background in coaching. And so they will get assigned to work with a strategy instructor. And then the way that our program is a little bit unique is that there's not a set program that students apply into. We build the program around what the students' needs, individual learning style, and goals are for that particular semester. So you know, we do have students that will stay with us, as somebody else indicated, throughout their duration of their time at UConn, all 4 years. But every single semester, their goals are going to change, as we would expect that to happen. But things that students can work on in the program include a lot of those executive functioning, time management, organization skills. We can work on specific strategies: reading, writing, note-taking, etc. Social skills is a huge one, stress management. We do a lot with our career development, and we partner a lot with some of the local larger companies in Connecticut to create internship programs that we can connect students with. So we do a lot of work there. In addition to the BA program, we also have a peer mentoring program that students can opt into. There is no fee for that program, for the peer mentoring program. Students can just choose to be a part of that. We also have a technology unit within the center that, again, there's no fee for it. There's no additional cost for that, but our technology team is trained to work with students and help them identify different apps and learning tools that can help their process in a particular course become more accessible for them based on a variety of different features and different technologies that we can install onto their device. What else can I share with you? In addition, we do have a summer program that we will offer for students as long as there is interest. This past summer, we did offer it online, but I think students were just a little burned out with the online environment, so we didn't end up running it, but in a quote unquote normal semester, we do have that program that is in the summer, and it is on campus. The way that it works is students will have an online component to the class, we call it a class, to the program a week before the semester begins. They will do all online to sort of identify campus resources. And then the week that students are supposed to move onto campus, we move our group on 3 days early, and they meet with our strategy instructors, and they will take them to the bookstore to help them get their books, walk through their schedule and take them from class to class, and sort of help them with those things that students are usually too embarrassed to ask about, like, how do I do my laundry? How do I operate in the dining hall? Where do I get my mail? So we will work with students around those sorts of things in our summer program, and that's called UConn GPS. So I will pause there, and certainly if there's other questions when you get back to me, I'm happy to answer them.
Super, super. You know, before we get into the question and answer, I just wanted to pause for a second, you know, and just explain a little bit to the audience, parents, students, staff, et cetera. You know, in as much as we have 4 wonderful universities represented here, You know, you may not have a specific interest in attending one of these universities. You may have an interest, which would be wonderful. But the real reason is to talk about support services. And I think the 4 schools that we have really offer a great variety and have a long history of success in being pioneers in support services at the post-secondary level. So that's really the purpose of tonight's panel. In as much as it's wonderful and you may have an interest in going to Boca Raton or going to Stores or Poughkeepsie or Purchase, New York to one of those fine universities, the real purpose is to really listen to the types of supports, the types of services that are available at the post-secondary level. And it's just a feeling in the experience that we have within our special education and guidance program that these 4 schools really have a great offering and a good history in terms of providing these types of services at the post-high school level. So that's really what I hope that you could take from this evening. So, yes.
I'm so sorry. The one thing I did forget to add, and I always forget to add this just because I always think of UConn as just one big university, but all of the all the programs and services that I had mentioned are available at all of the regional campuses, in Stores and any of the regionals. So I just wanted to make that note because I wasn't clear on that.
Well, that's a perfect segue because I had a parent email me about a half hour before the presentation. They could not make the presentation. But they wanted to know what the UConn Stanford campus had to offer in terms of support services.
Yep.
So you're very similar to
Everything, yep. Everything that I mentioned that is available at Stores is also available at the Stanford campus. We have a full-time disability service professional there. We have a full-time Beyond Access strategy instructor there. And any of the tech needs, our tech department is available. They're housed in Stores, but they do all virtual appointments, and we can send equipment to Stanford. And we can also take like remote control of a student's computer and install software from Stores onto their computer at the Stanford campus.
Great. I can cross that question off the list. Super. So do we have a question maybe from the audience that we'd like to jump into?
One of the questions on the Q&A, Chris, that says, how does executive functioning support translate into, test accommodations, let's say at a university campus?
Okay. Anyone want to take that one?
Sure. So for us, of course, accommodations are totally separate from these fee-based things. However, we do see that sort of overlap. Oftentimes, learning specialists will work with their students during sessions, at least in our program, where they're building those study skills. But not only that, they're talking about, okay, when you sit down for a test, what are some strategies that you can use? If you're feeling really stressed, like what can you do to mitigate that? And so it's talking through that kind of stuff. So it's sort of taking those executive functioning skills that you're building and then putting them to practice in that setting. So I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Anyone else that would maybe like to add to that?
Yeah, very similar at UConn. The accommodations is obviously separate from our fee-for-service Beyond Access program, but our strategy instructors do a very similar thing to, sounds like what Manhattanville does. Typically, many of our students that do need testing strategies are also approved for like extended time on exams and a reduced distraction environment to take their exams in. So we have a testing center within our office that can accommodate 20 students in a reduced distraction environment. So they, even pre-COVID, we skipped a seat and they had their own partitions, but we also have I think 6 private testing rooms within our office. So if a student needs to be video proctored and be in a private office, a lot of students in particular on the spectrum will utilize that accommodation because they may pace when they're taking their exams, or they may fidget or, do whatever they need to do to kind of de-stress during that exam process, which would be disturbing to, another student that was taking an exam in the testing center. So many of our students that do want to work on the testing strategies in BA are also approved for those accommodations.
Karen?
I think it's important to remember that in terms of all the great strategies that you're going to get with your coaches and your tutors and things like that, the actual physical taking of the exam, at least at Lynn, if you are in the full support program and you're requiring a different area to take your test because of accommodations, as I mentioned, our testing center, that's something that you as a student have to communicate to your faculty. Our faculty at Lynn do not know who is in our support program and who is not. That is not information that's given to our faculty. So if you as a student want to disclose that information to your faculty, have at it, go right ahead. It's only going to benefit you. However, if you're not comfortable disclosing that information, that is your prerogative as well, and it's not something that's required. So if you're going to need to take your exam in a different location or unlimited time or whatever your accommodations may be, you just need to have that open dialogue with your faculty or else they won't know.
Thank you. Mary Ellen, anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think it was pretty similar. You know, Maris, we have a little testing area as well. So students can get extended time or a separate location or any other accommodations there. One of the things that we do is we do a lot of workshops throughout the year. So some of those things, you know, revolve around like test taking skills and different strategies and stuff like that to prepare. So, but very similar to everyone else.
Okay, great. Is there another question from the Q&A?
Yeah, there are a couple of questions in regard to like what is a documented issue? What is valid documentation? What types of things does a family need to provide in order to receive either accommodations or be entered into these programs?
Mary Ellen, how about if we start with you this time?
Sure, absolutely. So for the learning support program in general, there's an application, but then, you know, we do request like a psychoeducational assessment. So that would be something like, you know, IQ testing, academic achievement testing. A lot of times, you know, school districts obviously do those types of testing. So you'd be able to get those reports. But we also require like an IEP, or if you have a 504 plan, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with as well. You know, the students that are not in our learning support program that are just getting general accommodations through Maris, there's different forms on our website that you would fill out or have like medical documentation, such as psychiatric disabilities or you know, many others. So all those forms for us are on our website, and you can just have them filled out and then provide that documentation to us. So that's just some of the things that we look for. Again, I think Karen mentioned it, but we do like to have updated documentation within the last 3 years. I know it's hard this year with COVID and, you know, all of that, but we do really like to have the most updated documentation because it really tells the story about a student where they are presently, as opposed to, you know, documentation from 8th or 9th grade. You know, you're a lot different now when you're a junior or senior. So, but yeah, that's the types of documentation that we look for.
Anyone else?
I think it's just really important to whatever university that you're looking at, college or university that you're looking at, regardless of the type of support that you're looking at, make sure you know what specific documentation, because a full academic, comprehensive, fee-based program documentation is going to be so different from ADA accommodations, you know, so just, it's a matter of knowing what support you're looking for. That way you'll know what testing that you're looking for.
And I will say a lot of times at UConn, you know, students will come to us and they will, you know, one of the reasons they will give us that they haven't identified right from the get-go is because they didn't have documentation, and they were, you know, they didn't know that they could even engage with us without that. And I think that is a misconception, because a lot of times we will meet with students and we will hear what's going on for them. And we will often approve them on a provisional basis and let them know that, you know, here's what the documentation that we do need, but we will approve you provisionally for the duration of this semester, so that it gives you time to work with your treatment provider to get us that documentation, with the understanding that in order to continue receiving those accommodations in subsequent semesters, we would need documentation.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, we do a similar thing as well, where we'll provide those provisional accommodations. We try to follow, you know, ahead guidelines, and while we're doing that intake process, we certainly look for the scores within the neuropsych psychoeducational testing to really help to inform us of where it's necessary for an accommodation. But on top of that, it's really important for us to hear from the student's perspective how they feel that their learning is impacted by their diagnosis. And so I bring that up to kind of go with this question, but also to say, I'm always asked the question, what do you think the biggest thing is that I should work with my student on as they prep for college? And I think it's the self-advocacy piece. I need the student to sit in front of me and explain to me what they need and why they need it, because that holds a lot more weight than, although we very much value mom and dad or, you know, grandma, grandpa's opinion and that kind of thing, it's really important for us to hear it from the student themselves. So for them to start being part of that process now, so that when they get to us, we can help them even more.
Great, thank you. Maybe another question from the chat?
Someone is wondering whether or not, there can be communication with parents, and is an opportunity to, like, for the student to sign a waiver and communicate to parents.
So I think, and that's really was going to be an area that I really wanted to cover tonight. So maybe to talk a little bit about the role of the parent of a college student with a disability versus the role when they were a high school student. Who would like to take that first?
So we have a rule at Lynn. It's a self-imposed rule that we follow very, very to the T. So the first 2 weeks, our academic coaches are not at liberty to speak with mom or dad. That is just, it's a policy that we put in place. You can call every day for 2 weeks, but they will not return your call. They will not return your email for 2 weeks, because they really want to establish a relationship with your student and make sure that the student feels comfortable, make sure the student is settling in, and that there's really no preconceived notions. Because yes, although that testing that we just talked about is extremely valuable to making sure that we're providing you services and accommodations that you need and that you're entitled to, sometimes it's kind of nice to have a fresh slate that nobody knows where you're coming from and what you're doing, and you can start. There are some forms that are required for our team to speak to parents. The Buckley and the FERPA must be filled out by the student, allowing them to speak with you. And just in general, our faculty typically does not speak to parents. Typically, obviously it's a case-by-case basis. Also too, it's important to remember that when your student is registering for classes, they will be registering with their advisor, with their coach, and that's something that they're doing on their own. That's typically not something that parents are involved in, at least at Lynn, not involved in the course registration process, which again is going to be something that's a little bit different from high school.
Someone else?
Yeah, I can piggyback off of that and say, for our fee-based programs, we really find it important and most productive if the relationship can remain between the student and their learning specialist or their PAC coordinator. It just allows the student to be more open and honest about maybe something they're falling behind on and need some support with, and that kind of thing, and knowing that that's sort of a safe space to be able to admit your mistakes and kind of grow from them and that sort of thing. So sometimes parents will come to me with a concern, and I can help to relay that message, but we don't have any direct contact with those support people. In addition to that, if a student comes to me and says, hey, I'm really struggling with this and I'd like to tell my mom, but maybe you could be part of that conversation, happy to do that. But regardless of anything, FERPA does not allow us to disclose grades. So I've had parents say to me, well, if you knew that my son or daughter was failing, why didn't you call me? Well, we didn't call you because we met with your son or daughter 10 times and we put strategies in place and we did all these things. And by law, I can't tell you that unless the student tells you that. So again, as I said before, we appreciate that parents can bring a lot to the table. They know their son or daughter better than anyone else, right? But we really, for us, we ask that you let us do our thing, because we can really help your student grow if you let us.
Mary Ellen or Christine?
Yeah, we work with parents very collaboratively. I think that we kind of have a continuum of how we work with parents. We understand that for first-year students, in particular, if this is the first student that is going to college, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of nerves, there's a lot of questions. And also we understand that for K through 12, the parent does have to be the driver and is really heavily involved, and all of a sudden to then shift to this college environment where that's not necessarily expected or the norm. It's kind of a learning curve for everyone. So we really try to partner with parents as much as we can. Certainly, our relationship is with the student. We need to, I know one of the other panelists said this, we need to have those conversations with the student. I can't approve a student for accommodations through the parent, I need to talk with that student. I need to hear from the student what's going on. But if a student wants their parent or family member to be involved in the conversation, we never discourage that from happening. It's just, we try to be very clear about what is the role, so my role is this, your role as the parent is, I'm going to give you information so that you understand the process, but you kind of have to step out of the way and let us sort of do what we know how to do, because not only do we understand accommodations at the college level, but we also understand the community and the college environment that we are in and how to navigate certain processes and procedures outside of the center for students with disabilities or accessibility services. We understand how the university works at large. So, if a student needs to drop a class, we know what the channels are to navigate that with. So I think we try to work very closely with parents, but in a very appropriate way. I will say that for our Beyond Access program, we kind of leave that up to students if they do want their parents to, if they want to give their parents permission to check in with us. We set boundaries, of course. We're not going to email the parents every meeting. We're not going to tell them specifics of like what happened in the case, in our case notes. We're not going to send those. But if a parent wants to email once a month to check in, we don't necessarily discourage that, as long as the student is okay with that. And as long as the parent or family member knows that whatever the student shares with us, the student or whatever the family member shares with us, the student does have access to, because it's part of their educational record. And at any time the student can request that. So, sometimes I will tell parents, like, don't tell me something that you're not going to also tell your student, because they could have access to that. And I'm not going to create that dynamic. What has happened more so, I would say, this semester, just because everyone is virtual, is we have had a lot more students have their parents be involved and reach out to us. And we've had a lot of treatment providers that have connected or asked for permission from the student to connect with the strategy instructor, or to sort of join into a meeting, just to sort of say, like, here's what's going on in the family right now that's adding a layer of, complexity to what's going on for this student. And I just wanted to make you aware of it.
Thank you. Mary Ellen?
Yeah, very similar to what Christine was saying. We have that collaborative partnership with our families and parents. And I think, we also have our students in the learning support program sign waivers so that if we do need to connect for whatever reason with parents or families, that we can do that. But again, we always talk to the student before we're going to do that, or in collaboration with them, or, sometimes, a parent wants to join a meeting with us. Now that we're on Zoom and WebEx, I feel like sometimes parents are part of the meeting. But we welcome that, and we're there. We know, just like Christine said, it's a big transition for the freshmen, for the parents, and for the students. So it's kind of a collaborative model that we have.
Okay, great, thank you. Judy, anything in the chat? Unmute.
Thank you. Like the fee structure, any fees associated with accessing supports, how are they determined? Is that something parents find out, by having conversations, or is that actually listed on the website?
It's listed on our website, our fee structure. It's, I just typed in the chat as well. It's track 1, 2, and 3, and it's just based on the hours. So track 1 is 1 hour and track 3 is 3. But it's $1,800, $2,700, and $3,600. The way that UConn has kind of determined how much to charge was really just by looking at other programs around the country. We're sort of right in the middle. We're not the least expensive, and we're not the most expensive, so we kind of fall in there. With our program, it does get added directly to the student's fee bill. And so we have had some cases based on where a student's money is coming from, where because the student's cost of education is higher than it would be for a student that's not doing Beyond Access, we have had in some cases students they become eligible for more financial aid than they would have if they were not doing the BA program. So we have had that happen. We also have had a few students that have gotten their Bureau of Rehab Services, not in Connecticut, but in other states, where their BRS, whatever the equivalent is, has actually paid for the Beyond Access program. In the last couple of years, we've actually secured some funding from private donors that we've been able to grant some scholarships to students, and there is an application for the scholarship available on our website as well.
Thank you. Karen,
I
Mary
just
Ellen?
I just put a link in the chat as well to under the answer for that question. It has our fee structure listed on the webpage as well, along with some more information on what I kind of touched upon before. And while I'm at it, I'll just kind of hit on, I saw in the chat as well a question about the admissions process. I know that Mary Ellen kind of spoke about that in terms of Marist. For Manhattanville, a student will get in on their own merit, and after that, we come in for the accommodations as well as getting the student set up with the support programs. So it's really up to the student whether or not they want to disclose at the time of admissions, but that should have no impact on whether or not they are accepted.
And I do know that is one of the other questions, like, how do colleges view applicants with an IEP, let's say, or a 504? But it is important to know that that information is confidential, and unless a student discloses it during the admissions process, that is not something they're going to find out from Greenwich High School or Greenwich High School documentation.
I'm going to ask a question now because I would like to cover this, make sure we cover it before we run out of time. Do any of your programs, or do your programs have any special services, special programs for 2E learners, twice exceptional learners?
So at Lynn, our support program, we service, every sort of range of learner, learning style, learning exception, learning challenge, you name it, that's what we service. So as I mentioned before, we have a wide variety of things that are fully included in our comprehensive academic support program for as much or as little as the student needs. It's a flat fee, and they take advantage of it to their best of their knowing needs, I guess. But the great thing about the program is that we offer all of these services, and that we cater those services to the specific student and their learning style, because that's sort of the point of these academic support programs, right? Is that we don't all learn the same. So if I'm in the program, I'm receiving certain services, my roommate's in the program, and they could be receiving something totally different than I, because we both learn differently. So that works same for the 2E students. They're still going to have access to coaching and tutoring and our math labs and our writing labs and all that sort of stuff. And again, it's just a matter of sort of picking and choosing what you're going to need to eventually be the most successful student that you can possibly be.
Okay.
And then there are a couple of programs, a couple of questions, sorry, about, as students are progressing through college and maybe looking at internships or looking at, careers, looking at, master's degree programs, is there any special supports for students with disabilities for the, transition into the workforce or into graduate school?
So I can take that one. As I mentioned, we are starting to be a lot more intentional with our work with the Center for Career Development at UConn. It happens that our office is situated directly across the hall from them. So it kind of creates a really easy partnership, but I'm the liaison to our career development, and career development has identified a liaison there that works with me around any disability related issue in terms of the workforce. So this can be things like, like many schools, our Center for Career Development will offer like mock interviews for students. Usually students are given 2 of these per academic year, right? Or per semester, I forget what their structure is. We know for students on the autism spectrum, for instance, 2 isn't enough. It's going to take at least 2 for them to be comfortable to even start to demonstrate the skills that they may have in the interview, in a mock interview. So we've asked for 4, and there is certain interviewees that we know work better with this population and can kind of like pause and give them tips and stuff. So we've kind of created that partnership with career development to do that, to be more intentional with that. In addition, she kind of, my contact there sort of will go out to these corporations and companies in Connecticut and sort of because she has connections with them, sort of get the ball rolling in terms of how we can form internships specific for students with disabilities. And so then I will sort of take over once that relationship is established Like right now, we have one that we are engaging in with Travelers Insurance. Aetna Insurance is also connected with us. So we have, I guess it's been acquired by CVS now, but we have a couple of others that are underway that just haven't come to fruition yet just because of COVID. But so I think that UConn is being really intentional about that in terms of how can we both train employers to work with this population? How can we educate students in terms of what the accommodations process will look like in the workforce? And then how can we help make that connection between you're exiting college and you're either attending graduate school or you're going to be entering the workforce, and how can we be better about building the gaps that do exist there?
Okay, great.
For our Valiant Learning Support Program, we have some students that are in like a 5-year program where they're on an accelerated track to get their master's degree in just that one extra year. That program is certainly available to them. We also just have it open to any graduate student. While we believe in fading out, and we certainly have students that we see sort of gradually end up not needing our services in their last couple of years, we support them in that, but we've also got students who just find that their needs change and they kind of grow and change with their learning specialist, and they want to stay in the program, and so we don't kick them out. So it's all up to the student's preference, but certainly open to graduates.
Anyone else have anything to add? Then I have go ahead, Judy.
Well, no, I think, and that answered, I think, one of the questions. One person had a question about whether or not a student as a transfers applicant could take any of these programs. I have a feeling the answer was yes. In any given year, yes, great. Transfer direct as freshman, terrific. Thank you.
And the same thing too, sometimes students will come in as a freshman and they'll say, you know what, I got this. I want to do this on my own. I don't need any services. I don't need any accommodations. And they start and they say, whoa, I'm in a little bit over my head. And that is totally normal. That is totally fine. You can also too jump into the program. I know we've talked a lot about transitioning out, but you can also transition in very easily too.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that goes with accommodations too. I can't tell you how many students I've had come apply for accommodations during finals week. But you know what? They can do it at any time. So it doesn't matter. It's never too late.
Okay.
Yeah, and UConn, it's the same thing. I mean, we always laugh a little at right after midterm time, we see a spike in the number of students that are registering with this center to get like extended time on exams. And with our Beyond Access program, we do have students can join mid-semester for half the price. And we have a whole fee structure that goes along with that.
So I'd like to pose a question to the panel, and I think actually Alyssa alluded to this earlier. But if there's maybe one thing that a student and a student's family should be working on now while they're in high school to prepare them for, to access support services at the post-secondary level, what would that one thing be that they could be working on, whether it be at home, whether that be in their academic or resource room? What would that one thing be to kind of prepare them for college and accessing support services at the college level?
I mean, yeah, I think Alyssa said that earlier, just learning to be a good self-advocate. And I think that carries across the board in terms of, we always ask students, one of the first things I will ask them is, how would you describe your disability or your condition to me? And I think that that's one of the most powerful things that students can do is really sort of get comfortable articulating what their disability means for them, because a student with ADD doesn't mean that another student with ADD is going to look the same or have the same needs. And so I think students getting comfortable kind of talking about how it impacts them in the classroom, out of the classroom, and being able to communicate that is key, because that will sort of help with that self-advocacy piece, because it's much easier to help a student when they can tell you what it is that they're struggling with and what they might need assistance with. And on the flip side, I always tell students, tell me what you're good at, focus. We do so much focusing on the things that we struggle with. But I do think it's really valuable and important for students to also be able to articulate their strengths.
Mary Ellen?
Yeah, I was just going to say, also thinking about the type of level of support that you need, I think is really important. Because, maybe you don't need a learning support program or any of the other programs that people have been speaking about. Maybe it's just that you need the general accommodations. So, and the other thing I always say to, families and parents and students that come to visit, like, make sure the place that you want to go to is a good fit for you. And that, that you feel like you're going to fit in, and that, they have everything what you want, and not just accommodations, but the major that you want, the activities that you want, because that's just as important. And we always say at Marist, you may be serviced through our accommodations office, or you may be in our learning support program, but you're a Marist student. That's who you are. And so we want to make sure that we're meeting all the needs, and academics is not just as important. I think that they go hand in hand, the social, emotional, and academic part of college. So I always, just want to throw that out there to make sure that, it's a good for you, and vice versa, and even if like the colleges now with COVID are, maybe not having visitors or whatever, if you could do any Zoom or WebEx events, or even just drive to the campus and you can drive through and just see what it's like and what it's about, so that's just my piece of advice.
Okay. Karen?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's sort of been said up to this point. And I think that seeing that you're finding that right fit where you are comfortable, because again, you're starting fresh, you're starting on a clean slate. It's not the same, resource room folks or special education folks that you've been working with since you were in 6th grade or 9th grade, or some students even kindergarten, so it's a really not only to make sure that you're comfortable with the university, but whatever the accommodations team is, making sure that you're really comfortable with them too. When we match up students with our coaches, we do it very intentionally. We want to make sure that our coach is specializing in areas where you are going to thrive and excel too. So finding that right fit is huge. I can't stress that enough.
Alyssa?
I guess I know I kind of started this whole thing, but I just want to add one other piece here. I think there's this misconception, and I might just be speaking for Manhattanville. I certainly don't want to speak for anybody else on this panel. But because we have these extra support services, there seems to be this misconception that it will be a really smooth transition, and my student will be able to get all their work done just like they did in resource room, or like they did with their tutor at home. When in reality, even though our program offers 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours a week, that is not a lot in a college work week. The student needs to have their own set schedule. They need to be doing work on their own. And it really ultimately falls on them. So that regardless of where you go and what supports you have in place, it's recognizing that that will be a huge transition for everyone.
Excellent, thank you. We looks like maybe we have a few minutes left, and I don't see any questions in the chat. So I know there's been a lot of talk tonight and a lot of discussion, and we've heard a lot about accommodations, but I haven't heard anything about modifications. So I was wondering if I'm seeing some head shaking. So I'm wondering if each school can just kind of touch on, the philosophy of your programs when it comes to accommodations versus modifications.
So for us, we refer back to the law. And when we think about putting accommodations in place, we want to make sure that we're not altering the integrity of a course or an assignment. And so most of the time, if we think about this kind of generally, a modification would do that. For example, I just worked with a professor yesterday who converted a music theory exam into a Word document type format with headings and everything for a student who's blind. So the student can't access any visual music. So he transferred all of those questions into words. The student came back to him and said, I want it in an audio format. I want you to play whatever examples and do it that way. And I had a conversation with the professor, and while that was the student's preference and she felt that she was entitled to that modification, it actually wasn't going to allow him to assess her at the same level as the rest of her class. So it's things like that. So that, again, falling back on the law there and making sure we're not compromising and we're leveling the playing field. We're not providing an advantage.
Yep, we operate the exact same way. I couldn't have said it better myself. And, you know, I think that one of the biggest areas we see this in is when students will come in and request a second language substitution. A lot of times they'll say, can I have that waived because it was waived in high school? And we always say we don't waive anything. It has to go through a substitution process because based on a student's academic program, that may be a fundamental requirement of their program. You know, if you're going into international business, even if language is hard for you, that may be a core requirement of that program, and nothing can be altered because that would compromise, as you said, Alyssa, the integrity of the program, and it doesn't level the playing field. It gives one student an advantage, and they're not being held to the same competencies. So.
Excellent.
Absolutely. I would echo what Christine said. We get that a lot with foreign language waivers or things like that. The same thing with mathematics as well. At Lynn, we do not have any preparatory program, any preparatory courses, any remedial courses. They are all the same classes. As I said before, our program is academic support only. So you're in the same classes, the same majors, and we're held to the same standard as everybody else. It's just going to give you some support outside of the classroom.
I know, Karen, when I came to visit Lynn several years ago, and I met, I think, with, you know, a dean and I think one of your specialists from your academic support program, and I used the M word, and they told me you cannot use the M word on the Lynn campus. Modification, right. No, you cannot use the modification word on campus. So
that's right. You learn that very quickly when you come to Lynn.
The first thing they told me when I asked. So, any final comments or last comments before we kind of close for the evening? Because I have a few closing comments I'd like to make before we call it an evening. Anyone? No? Any other questions? Karen, go ahead.
I just want to say that I think I forgot to mention this when I introduced myself. I'm actually the admission counselor that works with all the students that live and go to school in New England, Connecticut specifically, Greenwich High School specifically. So I will be working with any family that is interested in applying to Lynn, whether you're into the support program or not. So if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am your #1 contact in the Office of Admission. I'm the only Karen in the admission office, so I'll be very easy to find on our website.
Anyone else? So I know there was a question in the chat that I wanted to just address very quickly. I think someone asked about what is BRS, the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services. Someone had mentioned that. In Connecticut, that agency is called the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, and it's a federally mandated program that every state in the union has a vocational rehabilitation program. And it's a program that offers support services, post-secondary education, employment, services to adults with disabilities. In Connecticut, as I said, it is called BRS, or the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, and I'm actually the liaison with our local office in Stamford. So if anyone has any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me at Greenwich High School, and I'd be glad to discuss with you and potentially make a referral if needed. And on that note, I just want to say, I want to really thank Judith Nadel for helping us out tonight as the coordinator of guidance with the Greenwich Public Schools. I wanted to thank Matthew Hartigan for helping to put this together and having our welcome for the evening. A special thank you to Michael Antonaccio, who was the behind the scenes tech person. And I can't believe that this is wonderful. And I actually was able to get on this, and it was a good evening on Zoom. And I want to thank Michael for that. And I want to thank again, the folks from the Special Education Committee that got the word out tonight. It looks like we had about 50 participants, which was great. And again, I most want to thank our panelists, Karen, Mary Ellen, Alyssa, and Christine. Thank you for giving up an hour of your Tuesday night. We really appreciate it. It's great seeing you again. I hope all is well and you stay safe on your campuses. And I'm just hopeful. I'm hopeful that maybe next year we can get back together at Greenwich High School on college night, and we could have a panel there again, and we can have all you be a part of that. So I really want to thank you all, and just have a great holiday season and be safe and well.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.